The screams echoed through the dark hallway of Rikers Island. Metal doors slammed shut, guards shouted for backup, and somewhere in the chaos, a fight raged on. Blood spilled across the dirty floor as two inmates wrestled, one clutching a sharpened piece of metal he had hidden for weeks. The sound of fists hitting skin and bodies crashing into steel filled the air. Other prisoners banged on their cell doors, yelling, some cheering, some terrified. A guard finally broke through the crowd, but he was too late. One of the men collapsed, gasping for air, clutching his side as blood seeped through his jumpsuit. The other stood over him, breathing hard, his eyes wide with rage and fear. For a moment, time froze inside the jail known as the most notorious in New York City. This was life at Rikers Island. Violent, unpredictable, and always on the edge. But how did things reach this point? And what happened to the inmate lying on the cold floor as alarms blared across the prison? The story begins months earlier, when 22-year-old Marcus Johnson first set foot inside Rikers Island. Marcus had never seen a place like it before. The bus ride from Queens was silent, every man chained at the wrists and ankles, staring out at the skyline of New York as it grew smaller in the distance. By the time they crossed the bridge to Rikers, the city felt like another world. The island was surrounded by water, a fortress that promised no easy escape. The gates opened, and Marcus felt his stomach twist. He had been arrested for robbery, a crime he swore was a mistake. His lawyer told him he might only stay a few months while waiting for his trial. But Marcus quickly learned that even a single day in Rikers could change a man forever. The first night was the hardest. His dorm was packed with men, most much older than him. Some lay quietly on their bunks, others paced like restless animals. The air smelled of sweat, damp clothes, and something sour that made Marcus gag. He tried to keep his head down, but the moment he walked in, eyes followed him. At Rikers, weakness was hunted. One inmate, a tall man with tattoos crawling up his neck, approached Marcus and whispered, "You knew. Stick close, kid, or else you won't make it through the week." Marcus didn't know if that was a warning or a threat. The days were long, filled with noise, shouting, doors slamming, guards blowing whistles, and fights breaking out over the smallest things. A tray of food, a dirty look, or just boredom. The guards tried to keep order, but there were too many men and not enough control. Everyone knew gangs ruled most of Rikers. If you weren't with one, you were alone. Marcus tried to stay invisible. He avoided eye contact, ate quickly, and returned to his bunk. But in a place like Rikers, trouble had a way of finding you. One morning, while standing in line for breakfast, Marcus accidentally bumped into another inmate. The man spun around, his eyes cold, and shoved Marcus hard. Trays clattered to the ground. The entire room went silent. Marcus felt his heart pounding. He muttered an apology, but it was too late. The man lunged at him, fists flying. Chairs scraped as others jumped up to watch. Guards rushed in, but not before Marcus took a hard punch to the jaw. His lips split open, blood dripping down his chin. That was his first taste of violence at Rikers, and it wouldn't be the last. After that fight, Marcus knew he couldn't survive by staying quiet. He needed allies. The same tattooed man who had warned him on his first night reappeared. His name was Reggie, and he was part of a small crew that controlled their dorm. Reggie told Marcus he'd protect him, but protection always came with a price. So Marcus began doing small favors, carrying messages, handing over partas of his commissary food, even standing watch during fights. Each day pulled him deeper into the prison's shadow world, but nothing prepared him for the night the alarms went off. It started with shouts from the far side of the dorm. A fight broke out, fast and brutal. Chairs flew, fists swung, and men scrambled to join in or get out of the way. Marcus tried to stay back, but Reggie shoved him forward. "Time to prove yourself, kid," Reggie hissed. Marcus froze. His stomach knotted. The fight was spreading like fire, and guards were nowhere in sight. Then one inmate pulled something from his pocket, a piece of sharpened metal glinting in the dim light. Marcus's blood ran cold. Before he could move, the man charged straight at another prisoner, raising the weapon high. And in that moment, Marcus realized he had to make a choice. Stand aside and risk being seen as weak, or step into a fight that could end his life. The chaos roared around him. His heart slammed in his chest. And then, the sharpened metal glinted under the harsh prison lights. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. The man holding it looked wild, his eyes burning with desperation. He lunged, and the dorm exploded into chaos. Prisoners shouted, some climbing on bunks to get a better view, others pressing against the walls to stay clear. Marcus's feet felt glued to the floor. He could hear Reggie behind him, yelling, "Don't freeze up now! Move!" The blade slashed down, barely missing its target, but catching the man's arm. Blood sprayed across the concrete. The victim howled, grabbing his wound, stumbling back. Marcus didn't think. His body acted for him. He shoved the attacker from the side, trying to knock him off balance. The move worked, but it drew every eye in the room to Marcus. The man turned on him, furious. "You!" he snarled, and swung. The sharpened metal sliced the air inches from Marcus's face. His heart pounded so hard it felt like it would burst through his chest. He ducked, scrambling backward, his hands up in a useless defense. Around him the crowd roared, the noise deafening. Reggie rushed in, throwing a punch that connected with the attacker's jaw. The weapon clattered to the ground, sliding across the floor. Marcus dove for it, his hands shaking, but just as his fingers touched the cold metal, "Down! Now!" The guards stormed in, batons raised, pepper spray cans in hand. They rushed through the dorm like a tidal wave, shouting, swinging, spraying. Inmates scattered, coughing, rubbing at their eyes. Marcus dropped flat, the weapon just inches away from him. A boot slammed into his side, and a guard shouted, "Don't move!" Within minutes, the chaos ended. The attacker was dragged away in cuffs, his face swollen, his nose bleeding. The injured man was carried out on a stretcher, his arm wrapped in bandages. The dorm stank of pepper spray and sweat. Marcus lay on the floor, his chest heaving. His lip still stung from the earlier fight, and now his ribs ached from the guard's boot. He had survived, but just barely. The guards hauled Marcus up, shoved him against the wall and searched him. They didn't find the weapon. Another inmate must have grabbed it in the madness. But they didn't care. Everyone in that dorm was guilty in their eyes. Hours later, when the noise died down and the dorm returned to its uneasy silence, Reggie came to Marcus's bunk. "You did good," Reggie said, his voice low. "You stood your ground. That means you belong now." Marcus wasn't sure if that was a reward or a curse. Belonging to a crew at Rikers meant safety, but it also meant debts that were never truly paid. The days after the riot dragged on, tense and dangerous. Guards locked the dorm down, limiting movement, cutting off visits, even restricting meals. Everyone was on edge. Fights simmered just below the surface, waiting for a spark. Marcus tried to keep his head down, but whispers spread fast. Some inmates called him brave for stepping into the fight. Others said he was reckless. And some, dangerous men, decided they didn't like the attention he had gained. One night, as Marcus lay on his bunk staring at the ceiling, he heard footsteps. A shadow loomed over him. "You made enemies, kid," the voice whispered. "And enemies at Rikers. They don't forget." Marcus sat up, his heart thundering. Before he could respond, the shadow slipped away into the darkness. The warning gnawed at him. Every meal, every shower, every walk in the yard felt like a trap waiting to snap shut. He never knew when or where someone might come for him. Then came the day it finally happened. The dorm had just been released for recreation, and men spilled into the yard. The air was heavy, the fence towering over them like a cage. Marcus stuck close to Reggie, trying not to draw attention. But as he turned a corner near the far end of the yard, he saw them, 3 men waiting, their eyes fixed on him. One cracked his knuckles, another tugged something sharp from his waistband. Marcus froze. His mouth went dry. Reggie was nowhere in sight. The men closed in, circling him like wolves. The tallest leaned close and whispered, "This is what happens when you play hero." Marcus's pulse raced, his mind screaming for escape. The yard around him blurred. And then the first man lunged.